Hooty hoo, all my stock market gamblers. Welcome today. I'm Tall Mike. I'm so glad you're here. What do we got going on in the markets? Well, they're still trying to push up to new record highs, right? We're really close to the highs. But what do we got this week? We got the Fed meeting this week. Now, the Fed meeting a lot of times changes the direction of the market. We've been going up. Maybe it changes the direction to where we're going to get that pullback finally. We'll see how that plays out. A lot of people think we're going to have a crack up boom, right? Okay, so we're above the 20-day, so the direction's still higher until we get below the 20-day. So maybe this crack up boom that we've had for the last 14 years will continue a little while longer. But my take is that we're very close to a topping out pattern. We're going to make the top and we're going to come back in. Now, yesterday we had the ending of the petrodollar. The petrodollar came to an end, right? That started in 1974 when Kissinger went over and talked to the Saudis and they said, hey, if you take only dollars for oil, we will protect you. But Saudis realize we can't even protect ourselves, let alone them. So they say, okay, the contract's up. Had a 50-year run. Nobody's talking about this on mainstream media. But what this means is that a lot of countries no longer need our dollars. Now, they don't need our dollars to buy oil. They might, what are they going to do with them? Well, they're going to send them back to our country, right? They don't need them anymore. They're not going to be buying our dollars. Okay, so what does that do? All the dollars come flooding back to our country, and maybe that can help the stock market with a little bit of a crack up boom. But what it really does, it's going to be very inflationary, going to make our dollars purchase less, right? Because inflation is going to go up. But yes, the petrodollar came to an end yesterday. Now, the move out of the dollar is not an overnight thing. It's not like happening overnight. It is happening at a quicker pace. There's more and more transactions being done in other currencies that are not the dollar. Now, I keep saying that the world currency is going to go to gold eventually. A lot of countries already trade with gold between themselves. They are getting away from the dollar. The dollar is going to be going to zero. Okay, that's just my take. And I think it's happening at a faster pace, but that will happen over time. Now, what I want to talk today a little bit about is, well, the wealth gap. Now, I had an open house this weekend. Well, actually, I take that back. I canceled my open house this weekend because the house that I had that was going to sell, anyways, I had to sell it this weekend. Anyways, we had three full cash offers, like within 2 hours of me listing the house. Okay, that's pretty weird. I mean, they were all cash offers, right? Nobody else is buying it. Look, if you need to get a loan to buy a $3 million house, that's 1,200 square feet on a 6,000 square foot lot. That's 70 years old, all original. You should not be buying the house. But there's people walking around with $3 million in their bank account. You see, I got to see the proof of funds for these three different buyers, and they all had over $4 or $5 million just sitting in their bank account. Now, I think that's crazy because I'm hoping the banks don't fail before they have to write the check to buy the house. We're still a couple weeks away from closing, but at three full price offers. Now, you got to understand, I live in one of the wealthier areas of the United States next to Apple Computer. Now, we also have, Facebook, we have Google, we have a lot of the big companies, and they get paid a lot of money, so they get, millions and millions of dollars to work for these companies, and they're the ones going out and buying these houses with all cash. Okay, so anyways, it becomes the haves and the have-nots. Now, that's on one side of town. Now, you go to the other side of town in San Jose, they're not getting any offers, and the ones that they're getting offers, I got 5% down. Maybe they stretch it to 10% down. Then they have to qualify for the loan. Then the house doesn't appraise at that price, so they have to drop it down. See, the haves are on one side of town, and the have-nots are on the other side of town. And this is just my town, but it's like this pretty much across the United States. But there's a wealth gap. And the wealth gap has never been greater in the history of the world. Not even during the Great Depression was the wealth gap between the rich and the poor at such extreme levels. Now, there was an article that came out over the weekend that said the average CEO of the S&P 500 makes 200 times the average worker's salary, the average worker's compensation. 200 times as much for the CEO. Now this once again extends the wealth gap. It extends it wider and wider and wider. In America, we have a big wealth gap. Now, anyways, you'll notice that the top 10% of Americans own 93% of all the stock market. So top 10% owns 93%. The normal ratio is like the 80-20 rule. You've heard of that, where 20% own 80% of the assets, but it's getting more and more extreme. Top 10% now own 93% of the stock market. Well, that's interesting. Well, what about the bottom 50%? The bottom 50%. So if you cut the nation in half with the rich people and the poor people, how much of the stock market does the bottom 50% own? Well, they own less than 1%. 1%, tall Mike. How's that possible? Right. Okay, so it's becoming more and more extreme, and we're seeing this on an increasing basis. If we continue at this pace, eventually the top 1% will own 100% of all assets. Okay, but the poor people are really struggling. We have 42 million people in this country that are on food stamps. 42 million people are on food stamps because they're poor. They have no money for food. Food prices are spiking up higher and higher and higher. And that's just, the food price, the gas prices, everything's spiking up. Now, what we have, let's talk about the millennials. Now, it goes for Gen Z and all those people. But the millennials, amongst themselves, the difference between the rich and the poor is very extreme. Now, what's causing that? I'm not really sure, but a lot of the millennials, they can't find a job even after they get out of school, and they're straddled with all the student loans and that stuff. Okay, so they have to make the payments, and the only jobs they can find is driving for Uber, maybe driving for Lyft, but they're having to go out and hustle 2 or 3 jobs trying just to make rent, and most of them aren't even making rent. Most of them still living at home with their parents, because they can't survive. And Gen Z, it's really, really sad. I mean, they're trying to survive on credit cards, right? They don't have jobs. They can't get the job. Can't make the rent payments. The jobs they have won't pay the rent. So they got their credit cards maxed out. But it's worse than that. They got the buy now, pay later programs. They're trying to survive, right? But even amongst themselves, the Gen Zers and the millennials, the haves and the have-nots is very different. Now, let's talk about the haves. Maybe they were, working at Uber and they saved up $10,000, right? And then they went and they YOLO, right? They yo-yo. They bet on Dogecoin maybe, or Shiba Inu, or they put it all in some crypto coin, and that crypto coin took off and they are $1 million. But all their friends, they have no money, right? Or maybe they're like an attractive looking woman and she decides to go on OnlyFans, and she has an OnlyFans account, and maybe she's making $2 million a year. So the haves are way up there, right? They're way up there, but they're same age bracket. The majority, the bottom is they're just not making it. They're having to borrow money just to try to make it. Now, this is sad, right? Okay, but there's this wealth gap, and this wealth gap is getting more and more extreme. And what happens when you get these wealth gaps, when they get too extreme, you have what's called, a kind of a revolt, actually, right? I mean, at some point where you have all the rich people own everything, and then you have basically, the slaves, for lack of a better word, right? I mean, they're going to be indentured forever. Let's say you just get out of college right now, right? And you want to go buy that $3 million house, and maybe your parents give you the down payment, but that wipes out your parents' savings. But now you got this house, and you got to make your payment on the house for the next 30 years. Now think about that. Okay, the person that's buying the house that I'm selling, okay, it's a couple, they have kids, they want the school districts, right? Everybody buys a house for the school district. Now they want the Cupertino School District. Now, I went to Cupertino High, it's not that exciting, but that's what people want. They're willing to pay the $3 million for the 1,200 square foot house. But when you think about the bills, the utility bills, the maintenance bills, the insurance, if they can even get insurance. That's always a problem now. When you sell a house, if you have a loan, you have to have insurance. Now, these people are paying cash, so I'm not worried if they can find someone to insure their house or not. Not my problem. They're paying cash. They waived all the contingencies. So it's their problem. But here's the other problem they might have, right? For the next, as long as they own the house, their minimum tax payment per year just for property taxes is going to be $36,000. $36,000 a year for the rest of the time they own the house until they find someone else to dump it on. They got to come up with that $36,000 a year. Now, they're rich people. They can afford that $36,000 a year. But think about that. I mean, people renting houses in a lot of areas of the country. It's not even $36,000 a year to rent the house for the whole year. This is just their property tax. Think if they actually had to get a loan. That's why nobody's buying these houses with loans. They're cash buyers. They're cash buyers. They had to get a loan. That itself means that they cannot afford the purchase of the property. They would have to make a loan payment then. And that loan payment, 7%, 8%. I mean, it'd be nasty, right? I mean, $24,000 a month or so just for the loan payment on that $3 million. And then they got the $36,000, which is basically what? $3,000 a month, right? So you add those together, you got a lot of money going out every month. People cannot afford it, right? And homes have never been so unaffordable. But there's still the extreme rich. There's still a lot of money out there. And as long as this money's circulating, it's going to postpone the crash. The crash is coming. This is not sustainable. I'm sorry. You might think it is. You might think it's going to double from here. You might think these houses are going from 3 million to 600 million. We talked about that. That'd be 200 times like they've already done. The person that's buying for 3 million, the person before him bought it for 15,000. So 15,000 turned into 3 million. Maybe 3 million turns into 600 million. But that would be a form of hyperinflation when it hits the country. And I do think that it's possible that we're going to see hyperinflation hit the country. But once again, just my take. A lot of people think we're going to have deflation, and that's a possibility eventually once the system breaks, once the banking system falls over. But as soon as things start to go down, what do you think the Federal Reserve is going to do? They're going to print money, right? And right now, we're printing an extra $4 trillion a year that we don't have. On top of the $4 trillion that we're already spending, we spend another $4 trillion, and we go farther and farther into debt. And I think you're going to see the debt double in the next 5 years if we make it that far. If we go from 35 trillion to 70 trillion, I think it's because it's increasing at a more rapid pace. This is a huge problem, and maybe we have a sovereign debt crisis when they keep printing money and people realize, I'm already saying the money is completely worthless right now. It is worthless. It is not worth anything. The only reason it is because confidence still remains a little bit in it. People are still willing to accept it. Pretty soon, I think people are not going to accept it. They're going to be asking for your silver or your gold. Now, a lot of people don't have silver and gold. Matter of fact, less than 1% of people in the United States have silver and gold. Some people say that it's going to be confiscated. Well, how are they even going to find the 1% that has it? You see, they're not going to confiscate something that nobody has. 99% of people don't have it. So what are they going to do? Come find the 1%? Good luck with that. I say you're okay. I don't see a confiscation of gold or silver. Now, a confiscation of Bitcoin, possible. Make it illegal. I mean, they, can't find the Bitcoin. It's hidden, right? Can't even see it. I've never seen one myself. Have you seen a Bitcoin? If you have, tell me what it looks like. Anyways, my point is that Bitcoin's a lot easier to make illegal than it is to confiscate the gold. That's just my take. I know you're Bitcoiners, and I love Bitcoin. I'm on board with you. I love trading it up and down. That thing moves, man. It moves 80% either direction. But this is just my take. fake, and I hope you enjoyed this little talk. If you did, give me the thumbs up. Why not? Punch the subscribe button so we can talk later in the week. We got a lot of excitement coming this week. The Fed meeting, it's always big. That's the only thing the market cares about. Market doesn't care about earnings. Market doesn't care about anything. Look at those numbers we had last week. We had the jobs numbers. We have the unemployment number. We have the inflation number. All those numbers are fake. They come out. Look at, they predicted 175,000 jobs. Come out and say it's hit 277,000 jobs. We only missed it by 100,000. Don't worry. They're going to come back and they're going to, we'll correct it. A month from now, they'll come back and say, oh, we got that number wrong. It's really 250. A month later, it's really 220. Pretty soon, it'll be down to 175,000. They lied. They give you fake numbers. Why? Why do they do that? Because we have an election coming out. Get out there, everybody. Have a great day. I'm Tall Mike. Bye-bye now.